Adomar Namalinga Samaria and Shavadili Nardili Surshada and Adrindi Kazan Kuzu Shenjuki Sem Loza Kachu Kuzu Shenjuki Sem Gordi Shusim Channel. Tadri Tanam Shenjusum Kolia Shatu Simere.
Good morning, everyone. Today we'll continue from where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we concluded with the presentation of relative bodhicitta. Today we begin with the corresponding presentation of absolute bodhicitta.
That Jordan Kunzub the Kunzub Simge, Tundam Simge Savadi. Jordan Miyu Toy some down woman. Migba Cheze Kunzuba Tanya Bichela Miwa Inza Tichane Kunzub Simge Slavaji. Migba The Chuni Tentamba Senada Nilu Mibinza the Chane and Tendam Simges Nakuarab Chitu Chadiore Tandora Namjunji Simge Sada and Chanjuk Sim Sadi Zodi and Kuzu Simge Korana Koko Adamchi Tandam Simge Sadi Tuni Dobe Shirab and Rijimbre the Indusane Tadir Koran Simge Gibe Kashuba Ming Da Shadoma Tobe Simge Omad Chagamas.
The main difference between relative and absolute bodhicitta is in their focus, or you could say object. Relative bodhicitta is focused on dharmas, things, and absolute bodhicitta is concerned with, or you could say focused on dharmata, or the nature of things. Therefore, usually when we say to generate bodhicitta or use the term bodhicitta, we are referring to relative bodhicitta. Absolute bodhicitta really refers to the wisdom which realizes emptiness. We call it bodhicitta, but it is not something that one generates in the manner of generating relative bodhicitta.
Tandona Tanam Chanjuk Sim Gomba Talaya Kunzu Chanjuk Sim Gomba Jawa Anedi Kashu Delia Nyamsha the Jeto Ni Nyamsha the Nyamsu Lensu, the Jet of the Nyamsu Lensu, number Nisu of Imbra. Cesar Nyamsha Gikabla Jordan Zimir Gombadan, Jet of Gigabs of the Chadang Yula Dension Bang, Cesar number Ni on the orders.
As was the case with relative bodhicitta, the cultivation of absolute bodhicitta here is divided into two aspects: the practice of meditation and the post-meditation application. The practice of meditation here is the cultivation of a state free from fixation. The post-meditation practice is to come to recognize the unreality of potential objects of attachment and aversion.
Shorani Subdimbe Shloga Nishuzaniba Chidar Nawan the Darangas of Simni de Jebet Hata Kedarshen Sunzin Semanam Yelamiche Yasalales Tadigi Nyamshagi Golo Jordan Zime Nyamsu Len Sudi Suba Imbre.
The first of these, the practice of meditation on absolute bodhicitta, is described in stanza 22, which is found on the bottom of page 27 and the top of page 28, which says, "Whatever appears, all of this is one's own mind, and the mind itself has always been beyond any kind of conceptual extreme. Knowing that, it is the practice of a bodhisattva to abstain from mental engagement in reifying the attributes of perceived subject and object."
당아란수에게 낭물로서 말해 덴덴 주주 친한 취하탐지 덴바다도 나대야 전에 저기 다나 신기 장왕와 전에 나대야디 알아서 나와 지들은 알아서 나와 나신 지라탐지 랑그 심이로 다바삼래 전랑원의 주방 지 유경원의 주대버를 지 가요 말았어. 좀 도지게 되게 당부디 유기 니주디데. 다드네 니바디 심인된 주베서 타다제 순두사네. 좀 도지게 심디니가. 데만에 암 가서 도모에만에 유메라서 저베 타탐제다 차. 론도제기 셈데야 런식이 맞어버렸어. 근데 이제 대다르지 유이나래 유진나래 유대 유진이 되게 최탐제기 니로 가리는 바데 신 니로 지신도 신. 근데 치수의 난즈베 심 덴버트바 중세계 매도 냠도 가는 짐버 매뱅 안에 지 가서 저배 참아 지야 일은 미제바 저대 남과도 가마디 야외사고 넘기 가져야 냠샤라 다 간다 가서지 대답 전주 심양수 연수세나 장도 야나직 동이 검주디 되지 말아서
external and internal phenomena, the things that we experience or that appear to us, appear real to us, as though they exist as we experience them, independently of our experience of them. But that independent reality that we attribute to appearances is a mere superimposition of our minds, because appearances do not exist outside or beyond the experience of them. Secondly, that mind to which things appear has always, from the very beginning, been beyond or without any kind of complexity, which means any kind of state of being existent or non-existent. Therefore, knowing that this is the nature both of apparent objects and of the subjective perceiver or mind, bodhisattvas do not entertain in their minds reification of the perceived attributes of objects and subjects, but rest in a state of emptiness beyond elaboration, beyond complexity. And this is how bodhisattvas practice in meditation, or cultivate in meditation, absolute bodhicitta, otherwise put, the wisdom of emptiness.
And 다는 야세 통매 상보 디 슝디 자바부 야세 통매 상보 크랑기 제샤비 지 숭신나가 나로 있네요. 저 드메 경아나 이미 냠샤 차스 저 송아래 제장 딱 간다 최탐제 지 가져다지 치 유유진이 배 최탐제 예런신 다 동번이 산안자도这边什么탐제 다쳐 들으지 말았어 다들人心这一不能心的太阳了这边什么见一了嘛些不切切真的这个大这这边其他的这边看给样你完没吧냠버 샤토 냠버 샤베이나 다디 돈을 전주스 돈을 전주 있으면 냠버 샤투디 레임버레소
In another of his writings, Gyaltse Tome Zongpo, who wrote the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, wrote, "Rest non-dually in the state beyond elaboration," which is instruction that comes to has the same meaning as found in this stanza, which is that based on the fact that all things, all dharmas, both perceived objects and the perceiving subject or mind, are empty, which means that they are beyond elaboration, beyond any kind of ontological concept. Knowing that, one does not engage in or entertain concepts about them, such as true existence or non-existence. And that is how one cultivates absolute bodhicitta in even placement or meditation.
다베나 거주 나눠려야 되네 지즈미지바나마 다 간다지 차게 첨부 담바 그래서 그렇다 거주 나눠지 차게 첨비냐네 다 지즈미지바나마 유대비 차게 첨비냐네 데솔이야 아마나스가 소마라 이름이 제비 저거스 나 가시에서나 아사디 동반인치 나스카사데 에너지 일을 쳐봐 근데 그 동반이 일을 쳐봐 세난 저기 알았어 야 남주 용자래야 일을 미제봐서 다 일을 미제봐서다 동반이 일을 쳐봐서다 전다 직원도 지 용되게 유스래 간다야 진짜 이게 다 간다 냠네 지금 제도 되는 어디가 알아? 근데 인자 뒤준서 되네. 병가르 잡에 삼벽이. 순대 그유 순대 나눠래야. 이메 그 유무실 손바신 가셔도 병원 손어데. 아주 대가를 잡고 검사한 하스. 됐으면 알아. 세상 고랑 의변이 주 가르인 바디 라 마주 버체 수수의 로이베 제주 가야 맞아 이민라 수업에 그 제주 수업주 가야 맞아 버체 대응하려야 되네 그 제주를 냠버샤와선다도 대응하는 회의를 냠버샤 다 딘디송로 제단 대양 전담 전주스 고배추의 직원을 잘해요 알았어
Within the Kagyu tradition, one of the foremost practices is the practice of Mahamudra, which has come down from Lord Maitripa. And the particular teachings of Maitripa are often called the Amaniskara cycle, or the cycle of freedom from mental engagement. Amaniskara is explained in two ways. Sometimes it's explained as mental engagement in emptiness, more commonly, translated literally, explained as the absence of freedom from mental engagement. In either case, this refers to the authentic way to practice even placement on absolute bodhicitta. The same point is made by Penga Jampo Zongpo in the lineage supplication, which we recited earlier and commonly chant. In the stanza which says, It is said that absence of distraction is the main body of meditation. To the meditator who rests who rests freshly in whatever thought arises without contrivance or alteration, grant your blessing that meditation be free from conceptualization. What is being described here is resting without alteration, in the sense of without the imposition or superimposition of concepts such as it is this or it isn't this and so on, and remaining one-pointed in a state free from mental engagement in such concepts and relaxing in that state. And that seems to be the way to authentically cultivate absolute bodhicitta.
다 디제라 제톱도 차당 유라 densin bunsu디 숭여베임라 제단다 냠샤기 거스 세는 장도 마한토르 냠샤 친이바다 영아요 말이냐 냠샤 지dwin바르치 다 가서봐 제가 아주 튠 접시 봐 수수베 메디테이션 룸이란다 대 슈라인 룸 서머로 간다지 디나로 봐 튠 담제 냠는 세베 급들이야 다지 냠샤 소르치 다 델레야 주 당니 랑니 아니 자와시는 주게 급 나디디 버지데 튠사문 내가 없었는다 제도 내가 없을래 지 샤고면로 드는 주단다 제톱 내가 없어 다 거람베 레라 잠네 서머로 레라 잠네 데 컨디스체 냠네 쳐오래
The next stanza deals with post-meditation, and specifically the post-meditation of absolute bodhicitta, which is the relinquishment of imputation of reality to potential objects of attachment and aversion. Although our meditation or even placement may not be fully authentic, it may merely be concordant, still at the end of a session of practice, we eventually have to arise, leave the meditation room or shrine room, and enter the state of post-meditation, or sometimes called subsequent attainment. This is the state in which we become involved in various activities.
다 되려야 당부디 처유를 densin 처유를 densin 봉한테 숭여빈በ래 제장 되려야 쇼장 니슈 잡게나 쇼로가 니 쓰숨바 이동의 유제 차반은 야르기도 인자주 치신을 뎀브르나 제브르나 뎀브르미 미다신
The next stanza, stanza 23 on page 28, deals with the first aspect of this, how in post-meditation to relinquish or abandon fixation on the reality of potential objects of attachment. The stanza says, the pleasurable objects that we encounter, or desirable objects that we encounter, are just like the appearance of a rainbow in the summer. Although they are beautiful in appearance, they are unreal, and it is therefore the practice of a bodhisattva not to regard them as real, and thereby to relinquish craving and fixation on them.
다들 이동 유 랑게 이동 와서는 장도 랑라 일 태바 된저기다 유 랑게 초보이는 장도 야나지 수자바다 잔년바다 트시발라서 된저기 다지 되배연데 있는 장도 집에 탭이네요. 유 간데 탭이네요. 차바게 유 간데 탭이네. 다 탐집에 여두긴 장전는지 야기 두긴 장전는지 있잖아. 파 따살라 지도 템버지 알아야 돼. 이나양 전도 지 가르쳐요. 지 가르쳐 님보면 선한다. 가르쳐 전도 나와도 못 주버선한다. 나와 난신지게 다 가르쳐 지고 지도 템버 나와 난신지게 매비 버터 되는 유산 되는 시체네. 가르쳐 지 zebra number in a telia temper machine. Shenchabuade, Yahweh 7 Namgi, then Chabuyula Denshin, Bonzudi, Embarrassment.
A pleasant object is something that a particular person finds pleasant or agreeable. It could be a friend. It could be something nice to see, a pleasant sound, a pleasant smell or taste. All of these are potential objects of attachment. But all of these are in fact like the beautiful colors of a rainbow that we see in the summer. A rainbow is of course beautiful, but it does not exist as it appears. So therefore, it is just as we know not to crave or fixate on the transitory and really essenceless or non-existent appearance of a rainbow, it is the practice of a bodhisattva not to crave or become attached to any kind of agreeable or pleasant appearance. So this is the instruction on how in post-meditation to relinquish attachment to pleasant objects.
당의 율 대신봉한테 숨겨야 됩니다. 야, 동해나서 민원 부시다 준한 데버스 아탄체 대신민 뒤견의 체베체 추버다와 야셀라네.
The next stanza, stanza 24, also on page 28, corresponds with that and describes how to relinquish or abandon fixation on unpleasant appearances that might produce aversion. It says, the different kinds of suffering that we experience are like a dreaming of one of your children dying. Taking confused appearances as real is unnecessarily exhausting. Therefore, when met with adverse conditions, it is the practice of a bodhisattva to see them as delusion.
대란 장기 이도 메테바 이도 미용와 순비 나와 계약 지 자이네레 다는 신기 저 랑 저우레 다는 지 수민제바 자미네 발라서바 다나 신기 동해 지심 동해다 덴베 심지안 라서바这个大干的那我都下个够了呀。米lâm拿了，所以给他不喜欢。米lâm拿了就所以给，但是他说的，戒心胖也扛啥子？米lâm拿了心里，米呢，小米呢，东海用完的心上，就天这边大干的去。주변에 나와 내가 탐지리야 덴버스원이 민주산 되게 아탕체바 깔레카 덴버스원이나 수수지 깔레카 지다 안 되메라 지 동해에 와서 맞아요 말이야. 민주산 티귤zel 때네 미투비게 이도 명화다 체베 qab려야 지 디네 나의 저우이 냠바로 진다 디네 미두바오 냠바로 딘데기 덴버셴바 슈챵모 미제바 다 탐제 지 가르치 밀름도 규모다고 지 아주 주변 나와 임바 아주식 따고야디 이제 다디 야외서 남기 제톱도 되네 가서 다시 등위를 대신 고주디 말해서
When we encounter something that we regard as unpleasant, such as a person we think of as our enemy, or an unpleasant sound, or a feeling of misery, or see the suffering of others, and so on, it is appropriate to regard these unpleasant objects of experience as no more real than, for example, dreaming that someone you love dies, and the experience of sadness you feel during that dream. We exhaust ourselves by fixating on objects, pleasant and unpleasant, as real. So therefore, the instruction here is not to strongly identify with our projections such as this person is my enemy, but to recognize that concept, that projection, as a delusion. And this is the instruction on how to relinquish fixation on the reality of unpleasant objects.
단도나 저율의 대신 본 수인하래 다나지 등율의 대신 본 수인하래 대니월 니가로 단도나 지기 가르바 지 현차 본한테 개체모이 말해 지주 가서 나한테 다 탐집에 출발 때는 엔텔레베 현차 본한테 내가 조어들 때 말해
In both of these cases, whether it is abandoning fixation on the reality of objects of attachment or on objects of aversion, in either case, what is important is to let go of fixation on the perceived attributes of the object.
조디다 삼록한데 당고 알아서 나랑 소리야 다다 지 된된 추주도 당하란 소리 나와지 는게요 이제 다 간다지 지 나와 잡는지 는게요 din nawa di nang zam ni ne nawa zam ni ne da den de chu chu da bu ji ga zu jin de ya de den de chu chu da bu ji nang de nang we tu ni dene den de da du nang de ba nan xin ge nang wa qi xin du ji我们你最是难当的语言内水了等这些那我能是去여러 회사나 우리 여마です지금 딜이야 남주 가르쳐 버르스나 매시 나와서는 라도 야나 심해 자대 체제 되게 타니 노여래 가르스나 그러나 저러 나와는 시지 유지라 당분이네 중요요 말에 당분 중요요 말에 봐도 내뉴요 말에 타마는 가지요 말스 제가 네 견제되는 시자요 말스 시자요 말에 되는 매시 나와 이나야 낭 잠시 나와 잠시 말스 나와 잠시 가라 유견된지 처벌을 되네 유견된지 처벌을 되네 나와 잠시 말스 다대한 비랑 아주 TV 나노지 가서 다시 텔레비전 나노래야 지 송년만 샤대야래 송년 아주 샤와는 신지 피게 여러분은 요 말해 이내야 대대 송년 잠시 온디가래 그래서나 딱 안도 주제 된제게 가서 다시 거라 주제 제에서는 된제래야 된체 유연 된제 처벌을 되는 나와 잠시 온디가래서 되는 유사 디규전되네 진짜 배지 배지 덴버 마신 사디 삼로 땅땅로디 진짜 땅고요 차 지 나와디 까고야 매비지네 나와디라 뎀브르셴베 로도야지 진짜지리셔
Mainly the way that we need to think about this is that, of course, we experience appearances, things appear to us, but they are mere appearances. While being mere appearances, because they appear to us, they seem to us to be real. That is to say, as though they exist beyond or aside from or independent of their mere appearance to us or our mere experience of them. But in reality, if you ask, does what appears to me exist outside my experience of it? No. Because what appears to us has never existed. What appears to us never came into existence, does not remain in existence, and will therefore never pass out of existence. It has no basis whatsoever, other than being mere appearance. It is like, for example, the diverse images which we can see on the television screen. Those things are not really there. They do appear because they are an illusion created by, or an illusory image created by our technology. But the things that they seem to be are not really there on or in the television. And this is how we think about the unreality or non-reality of mere appearances. We do not refute or negate mere appearances, but we question the reality that we falsely impute to appearances.
지 소수익이 지 이동에 변지 랑 초보에는 장도 야는 지 소수익이 변하지 카폴스보다 사상에는 장 리들이 앞에 현차 전부여 진짜 돈에 아주 야 참석지 강에 먹고 싶지 소수리야 지 동해 넘버 먹고 지원해야지 아주 지 갈래요래 난 다른 신이야 가셔지 소수 조우세는다 안 가셔지 지 소수 미진나로래지 강에 땡게 다들 미 가셔베 지 디베 셈네베 가디위네 그 소수리야 동해 때봐 강에 때봐 텐체 테베 잼도야 된지 forgive를 잼도 된지기 강에는 좀 마음이 온데 제가 되게 좋아한데 그런 유딜레베 된된 주로도 나오는 간다 코르들 시험받쳐 싶지 된신 첨부 싶지 인자 대균전되네 다 수수기 유기면에 된지原来面 수수기 파 삼동당 돈 인풋 망고시 체제 근데 지금 돈에 간다 거다 간다 비게 된된 주중으로 좀 쇠샤 대双게 수수 셈게 와 쇠샤 마도 피니치 나만나나 마되바 수수 셈게 돈 봐 쇠샤지 대리인 줄 대균전되네 동이기 냠내 사데 된데가 돌려봐 자르시면 주고 아데 개심으로 마다데 신 최탐제 동반이레 랍데마데 랍데네야 디시라 처메데 그렇죠 된데가 배 차당기 윤리야 아주다지 그라 동이기 냠내데 바 자르니 에네제라 대신 도토버지 총아 수수이네 셈리아 디스지 relieve some 다지 데이지 팀뷰지 셈리아 동에 넘버망고 미용야지 데이지 relieve죠 아직 그거에 섬창도 시에마도 지 최탐저 동반이래 지 최게 톱으로 겹 안다지 계절 ዝ부로 시에네 데이시라 펜도 말았어
This has very real implications for our lives. Throughout our lives, because we fixate on the reality of perceived objects or appearances, we suffer a great deal. For example, by identifying certain objects as pleasant, such as friends, or if we're in a couple, our partner, and so on, we cause ourselves a lot of suffering through the intensity of our fixation on their supposed reality as such. Similarly, when we identify people as enemies, people who cause us problems, think of them as causes of our suffering, whom we find it hard to forgive, and so on, this fixation causes us a great deal of misery as well. In both cases, the cause here is not the attribute perceived in the pleasant or unpleasant object. It's our fixation on the falsely perceived reality of the object. In other words, these attributes are not present in the pleasant or unpleasant object. They're produced by the input that we add to the whole situation, that our minds create. And it is our own input, the creation of our own mind, that makes these concepts about people and things seem so real to us. But really, they are just the creations of our mind. Understanding this and putting this into practice is why the cultivation of emptiness is important. Otherwise, simply saying all things are inherently empty does not really do very much or help you at all. The function of the cultivation of meditation on emptiness and so forth is to reduce and eventually eradicate your fixation on the perceived reality of appearances and so on. It is that eradication of fixation that will relieve your suffering. Simply spouting highfalutin Dharma jargon will not really do you much good at all. The next section is training in the various aspects of training or guidelines of the cultivation of bodhicitta, both relative and absolute. There are 5 sections to this. The first of which is the practice of the 6 perfections.
chanju ya tango na shirung bo na me ji tejir len da na mi mi re ji ba dong ya sa la ne su a di ge jimbe par jin che teni yi zhe ru ba de shuru me be ran de me zhu ne xian ju zhu de ba ge me ne tejir si bian du me me ba yi shuru su ya sa la ne sa de shuru mi par jin che ni ju zhe jin ba ge wei long zhe de bi ya sa la ne zhe tam zhe jin de dan tejir gu la xian zhe me ba yi sabagomba gyasela ne suadigi sebe perchi randun bashi drube nyaran gola meshur dodo zhenhona zogyun de yunden june yi zuru zomba gyasela ne sua zuru gi perchi sine rabdo demba hadong gi nyomo number jaba xiexian sume xile yada dawai samden gomba gyasela ne suadi samden gi perchi shirame ba paru chingaye zobe changju tobro minebe tabdan denji kurusumi dobe 다디나는 이게 지체자 시럽 공부 자세라는 되게 시럽이 버진데 소용이야.
The practices of the 6 perfections are briefly described in the following 6 stanzas, starting with the stanza 25 on the bottom of page 28, which describes the practice of generosity, saying, if it is necessary for those who seek awakening to give away even their own bodies, then what need is there to say that external possessions must be given away also. It is therefore the practice of a bodhisattva to give generously without any hope for either payback or a pleasant karmic maturation. Stanza 26 describes the practice of moral discipline, the second paramita, by saying, if one cannot accomplish one's own good without moral discipline, then to seek to accomplish the good of others without it should be cause for laughter. It is therefore the practice of a bodhisattva to guard moral discipline without any hope for the benefit of it as higher rebirth. Stanza 27 describes the cultivation of patience, the third perfection, by saying, for a bodhisattva who seeks to accumulate the splendor of or the wealth of virtue, an aggressor or all aggressors are like discovering a precious treasure. It is therefore the practice of a bodhisattva to cultivate patience that is completely devoid of holding any grudges. And then stanza 28 concerns the practice of diligence. It says, if Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who seek only their own good or practice with a diligence that is like that of someone whose head has caught fire, then seeing that, a bodhisattva who seeks to become who seeks those qualities that are the source of good for everyone, will be all the more diligent. Stanza 29 describes the practice of meditative stability. Knowing that the kleshas are totally conquered by a meditation of insight that is endowed with perfect tranquility, it is the practice of bodhisattvas to cultivate a meditative stability that utterly transcends the four formless states. And then finally, stanza 30 on page 30 describes the practice of the perfection of wisdom, saying, as the five other perfections without wisdom cannot bring the achievement of perfect awakening, it is the practice of a bodhisattva to cultivate that wisdom that, endowed with means, is free from reification of the three aspects. There's not much in any of those 6 stanzas that is hard to understand in terms of the words. What's hard about this is actually putting it into practice. For example, if we consider the first perfection, generosity, what is the perfection of generosity? Is it simply giving something to another person, like giving food to someone who is hungry, or clothes to someone who is naked, or a house to someone who has no home? It's more than that. It's more than simply the external act or a manner of giving.
actual force 말하면 아직 뉴버르티 가르잖아. 동심들.
Really, generosity is the attitude of giving, being giving, and motivated by that attitude, actions of giving of body and or speech. But the real force, the real power behind generosity is the motivation, the mental attitude of giving.
제장 까담이 계획신이 곰밥에 가르수원에 있잖아. 진배 자와 진짜 매발라 톡. 진배 자와데 가와 톡도 알았잖아. 진바 매. 진짜 매. 차바 매. 진바 매. 근데 질 라레데 알았어.
Therefore, it was taught by the great Kadamba Geshes that what the root of generosity comes down to is a freedom from fixation and attachment, freedom from attachment.
다른 신기 계시 샤라웨 가르송하르잖아. 네 켈라 동의 편 미규 네 켈라 동의 편 미규지 진배 니미주스 네 결혼이야 동의게 편바 시미스 진배 니미 시미스 그래서 다 뒤년가데 집으로 차려.
네, 뭐만 될까?
이게 샤라웨서.
올라서.
네 결혼라서로다. 결혼라 동화여로. 동화. 지금 동화에게 편 결혼 시기미.
그래서
진배기 진짜여로. 되게 님이기 결혼 시기. 다 되게 된다도 집으로 차려.
So therefore, it was said by Geshe Sharawa. By Geshe Sharawa, I am not going to speak to you of the benefits of giving, but of the flaws or the problems of fixation or attachment, because it comes down to the same thing.
제가 미망부지기 다 진바다는 뱀미스 변연도스. 직직 다나 직레 용도 니 다나 니레 용도 사직다 편연 경가 삼다나 진배 편연을 삼다나 가르쳐라지 망부지기야 저 편연 이용 삼 진짜 진바동에 망부용돼 이나야 오늘 전에 진배가 된다도 하마지 진짜 매버데 용고야 이나 진배 편연 때는 다직 소소를 야보지 연구를 해서지 야부 연구를 해서 하루씩 가서다지 진배게 진바 파단지로 론주 전부 연구를 해서 최치말 론주 연구를 차다달래 야부 연구를 해서 서로지 증거로 다 진대게 배 편의 삼단 진배 편의 망부 통한 연구사는 대조를 삼단 진바 동아마가 진배게 된다고 하는데 진짜 매버티 신경 많았어. 단도 진바 당시 진짜 체로체로라지. 근데 이제 제자 뒤균전되네. 다다 송과 기시샤라 뒤 송과 이거. 이 결혼 진배 편시 결혼이 진배 편의 삼단 진바 당거래스. 이나 전다도도 진바사를 가르쳐서나 현지 차고면 용수 동아지 동심지 동심지 민주사 곧 제지야요. 제자 진배 퍼르도 심바사데 동에 셈바 전주 셈바데서 가르베 가르이네 베죠 베 동투야로 딘디지기 베 가르로다 찔래야 뭐보 칸래야 마차버 동누야지 여베 인주스탄 디 진배 퍼르도 심바 차가로 마듯이 뭐보 탐지 진고연한테 진배 퍼르도 심바 용도 마다 상만을 미탐지를 집에 동거야지 잘라 뭐뭐 탐지 지인 거야지 집에 버려도 집에 써야지 요아지 깔아 합시다.
A lot of people are motivated in acts of apparent generosity, acts of giving, by their belief in the results or benefit of the generosity. They believe that if I give one thing, I will get one thing. If I give two things, I'll get two things, and so on. So basically, many of us, when we practice giving, it's because we're hoping for a greater benefit in the future, which means that we don't really understand the true nature of a bodhisattva's generosity, which is the absence of attachment, absence of fixation. It is true that acts of giving will cause affluence in future lives and so on. But if that is the reason why we give, then not only are we ignorant of the true nature of the perfection of generosity, the absence of attachment, but we're actually using acts of generosity to increase, further excite our attachment to acquisition. And this is why Geshe Sharava said to his disciples, I shall not tell you about the benefits of generosity, but only about the problem caused by attachment. Because if we think about the benefits, then we will ignore the nature of generosity, which is the absence of attachment. So, a bodhisattva's generosity is that bodhisattva's ability to give anything away because they are not attached to anything. It is not the practice, it is not simply giving everything away while still being attached to it.
다들 이제는 주름이 버려지신 바지 소아. 주름이 버려지신 바지 아주 주저 나는 소만하지. 뽕에서는 토발라 주름 버려지. 치버시에서. 제가 지당 주름사를 신을 시단 잡아래. 이치를 놓아서 딱 한다. 신을 시단 잡아래. 수수 삼바디 신을 시단 잡아래. 또 로버지 텔레 라르도 리턴 점으로다지 텔레 도버지 근데 지리아다 주름스 알았어 안디딩도 자주 가서 신서만 나오게 되지 디딩도다 셴베 시제 두버지고 거라 다디고라 진짜기 신의 시제 뽕아데 맞아래 디기 털려야 안에 셴베 시제 두버사지 그거라서.
Now, just as the essence of generosity is the mind of giving, in the same way, the essence of the second perfection, moral discipline, is turning away from, or turning one's back on, renouncing all that is harmful to others, together with the potential basis of such harm. That is the basic form of moral discipline. In addition to that, on top of that, a bodhisattva's moral discipline must also include actively helping others, actively benefiting others.
제자직 수림 숭아사 다조디 뽕심 샤디 뽕에 셈발 수림 샤디 dombe surim 다들 수림 넘버 숨을 송어 봐 다들 dombe 수림을 조 dombe 수림을 거고 있어 간다 가리네미네 가르지 수림자디 지기 소수기 가르 바다 가시 준바이 나오지 준부시 유연도를 지야데 넘주르 준비 거를 미지시부들이야 가르다지 배 철루 가르다지 거라 넘주르당 철루디베 야보시지 전 대비미냐 대정부 평가 수수기 이디 안다르 수수 삼바디 안에 가르다 신유시대 제벌 출 도와지는 거 라버도 년도기 출임다 민자와 신유선비 출임사데 라버도 안다지 상바던 저것이라 차대 쳐도 년도가 주름사들 룽아 조르지 룽아가 또 전주스바사데 나 상바 조르지도 상바 조르지 차대 제자 수수 상바디 신유시대 제발 도배 띵도 대점지 미편바 디 띵도 아니 신라야베 제외 상바 닌제외 상바但自己写他们的关系，你晓得吧？马多别个，他是这个说这，捐没把咱们些个，原头还这没明白，他可是捐，他说他捐的太咱们些了，到这个他说你把没咱们些，你这个原头还是可能好些。
When we say that the essence of moral discipline is the mind which abandons or turns away from a wrongdoing, defined as all that is harmful to others together with the potential basis of such harm, principally this refers to the first of the three types of moral discipline of a bodhisattva, which is called the moral discipline of governance or vows or abstention from wrongdoing. When we think of this, however, it's important to understand that even this first moral discipline is not simply a matter of outward appearance. It is not enough to adopt the appearance or wear the uniform of a monastic. It is necessary that within one's mind, one has the stable intention to avoid all that is harmful to others and the basis of such. Especially if one is practicing the moral discipline of a bodhisattva, which is the perfection of moral discipline, then one's motivation for moral discipline is of paramount importance. One might say that in the moral discipline of a Shravaka, it is primarily governance of one's physical and verbal behavior that is of importance. But in the case of the moral discipline of a bodhisattva, as always with the bodhisattva path, it is one's mind, one's motivation that is of primary importance. So in addition to a flawless moral conduct, it is necessary that the bodhisattva's motivation for their flawless moral conduct be a love and affection for other beings. A simple a freedom from flaws of conduct is not enough.
미기 주시에 뉴스나 류이 숨아시 다 되게들이야 지금 미기 네 가서야 미기 어주에 레달람시에 뉴스나 이제 류아기 류기 숨아시부들이야 미기 왔어 아니 이 숨버디 미기에 레이 람사지 시오나 다 전주 소수 답에 나로래야 에너지 가져야 되지 ngama dumbo디 chena kora 가져 겐라지 마더지 치마디 집에 뇌스 미어가 잠시기 그랑 돈받아 겐라게요 얘는 전주 선반 나라 ngama dumboleda 치마디디 그 emphasize 체 뇌스 그 시에비미나 다디 뇌스 가져지原来 람사지 심지시는 뇌에 사바요 벤디가 그 전주 민념내다 가져베 크도 가와차야지 어디가 내미 뉴스다 디균선데네 디기 차네 다 뉴스 미에메사디 하장기다 간다지 고규르기 니주 또스 고도 규비 니주 차리 드레미 다티 조디 남균디 수월 수림 넘버 타바지 계획 가다메 계획이니사 수림 넘버 타바사디 조다 렌젤레 samlo madama ina surim number tabasa jungu maras tene jus lende samto ade surim number tabe dam mengaro de tein so ning vi jus san de jus de ne sem yeme sade ta ju so so ngene ji karro da ji karro 수수용은 파요 텐시된 거야 지마도 디지 가르쳐디 수수기 가르쳐다 치기 넘주르고 토안에 하고 돼야지 저거 마트리미 뉴스티 군자되네 땅 아주지 deeper understanding 주름이 벌어지면 사도 같이 띵삽선에 가서 배 어존샤디 개념을 주십니다.
When we consider the principal actions that are governed by a moral discipline, they are such as the 10 unvirtuous actions or 10 forms of wrongdoing, of which there are 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of mind. Generally speaking, we distinguish between the first 7 and the latter 3 by saying that the 3 actions, unvirtuous actions of body and 4 of speech, are actions, and the 3 of mind are paths of action. Now, this is a way to understand one of the differences between the moral discipline of the pratimoksha per se and that of a bodhisattva. According to the pratimoksha per se, then if one engages in any of the 7 actions of body or speech, this is a contravention. However, the entertainment of a state of mind that constitutes one of the 3 unvirtuous paths of action of mind, such as malevolence or malice, does not constitute a contravention of the moral discipline of the pratimoksha. In contrast to that, the moral discipline of a bodhisattva places greater emphasis on abstinence from the 3 unvirtuous actions or paths of action of mind. For example, if a bodhisattva entertains a mental state of malice or malevolence, then this is a direct contravention of their moral discipline of a bodhisattva. Now, if you think about it, someone's mental state, whether or not they are entertaining malice or malevolence, is a hidden or private matter. It's not observable to an external observer. So therefore, it was taught by the great Kadampa masters that the principal way to maintain pure moral discipline, and especially the moral discipline of a bodhisattva, is through constantly thinking about the results of actions and making moral choices accordingly. The instruction is that without thinking about or reflecting on the results of actions, it is impossible to maintain the level of care of one's mental state and so on that will maintain that moral discipline. So therefore, the practical instruction or guidance on how to maintain this discipline is through reflection on the results of actions. This is based on a deeper understanding of what moral discipline is.
제상담도는 륜학 차대 아주 참참 섭섭치고 가르치는 미 통과여자 아주 섭섭치고 니는 시험기들은 섭섭치게 요만 가르쳐 수직이 통과요 말해 네 인주산에 네 아주 된 고라바지 가서 밤에 왕도 당사 이나 급들이 전수선배 내가 올래야 배 가서다 륜아가 차와라 보라지 바이오티시 된 거가 될래 야지 심기배 가서다지 되게들이야 바이오티시 된 거지 되지 이마다.
The point of this seems to be that while we're often careful about what we do with our bodies and say with our speech, because after all people can see these things, they can observe it, we may be careless about what's going on in our mind because we feel that it's private. No one can see it, so we don't need to worry about it so much. But in the Bodhisattva context, we do need to be careful about what we do with our bodies and say with our speech. We need to be even more careful about what goes on in our mind.
갈라라 다지 세발에 아직 가르에 지고 능시 여와 체외입니다. 그래서 저발이야 여망 치당 망부를 지원이 알아서
The third perfection is patience, and there are several aspects to patience.
드레인 소수기 즉 서반 넘버 숨부디기 무암 디치니 치시로 샤방 민자민을 카가소서 요아레스.
Because there are essentially three main aspects to patience, each of them can be said to have a different essence or fundamental nature.
이제는 서바사리 조디 가주라지 서바 처음에 봐서 바지 진진층에 찍으러 주면은 우마리 진층에 찍 제가 서바 처음에 봐서 지단고 서바서 망고 좋아다 조조디다 지 처음에 봐 콩 처음에 봐 근데지라 나와지 계속 차대면.
But I think the most important definition of patience, which really it covers all of the different aspects, is the one we find in Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, in which he defines patience as the absence of anger, or freedom from anger.
다 dindichigi be sweba yume sade da zodi jig karwe ngaye chizeng we chaye na da ji kong de zhe me cha ru ji pa ji ji yong di de ne min ju san di jun zan de ne ji ge na ma ko man na ma zhe da ji swebe ge zawa men shan zin ba la toks para rani member ta des ji ka ju ba ji xie dan le lo shu ba ji men shi si ni andar ji rani le be ka ju da ji member ta sana ta ka ju da ji ba ji king bar bu kyung ji de ji ge to ne and ji nga ge shi da me wi na an control sa de des yong ra ru ji ba ji tin de bar ji on de yusra.
It seems that the key to the possession of, or having patience is to let go of our usual arrogance or pride. It's been taught that if you regard yourself as inferior to others, or you see yourself as lowly, then by letting go of our usual arrogance, you will be more patient.
다도나 서바사드 계속 쉽지 않아요. 전주 선반는 그냥 나로로 배 서바사드 계속 쉽지 않아요. 가르에서나 서바 매번 이는 가르쳐 안 오르서나 순여바 제연주산 판여바 자로르스 판여바 제서나 너바를 로버사드 요하요 말스 너바를 로버사드 매번 참아 아니 펜 도버사지 영어 말스 펜 도버사지면 아니 티버심이 최기 고고라 쭉토야요 말스 스타트 거리 지체돼야죠 말스 제가 티버심이 최기배 고주야래 왠지 서바데 계속 잘해요. 매번 잘해요.
Patience is extremely important aspect of Bodhisattva's training, because without patience we will be vengeful. We will seek to respond to the aggression of others with our own aggression. And as long as we are vengeful, we can't even begin the Mahayana, where the starting point is to respond to the aggression of others with only benefit and not reprisal. Therefore, patience is indispensable from the beginning.
따이네 샤바사데라 misunderstanding 망부지용데 예스라 샤바사데 그듯이지 가시 삼년나 샤바사데 신주로 chen 다지 가셔다지 우주로 신주 chen 진짜질이 하지 다 가셔지 소소를 진짜 싫어 첸데메야 소소 푸시를 체제 근데 지금 다 샤바고 이좀 가셔다지 가서다지 신수세는데 우주 개셔 된대질이야 샤박 삼당인데 어디에서 이나 샤바사데 된대질 다 샤바스가 많았어.
Nevertheless, patience is often misunderstood to be forcing oneself to put up with things or forcing oneself to do things that one cannot bear to or does not want to do. And this is not patience.
배나다 미망부지도 배나 드릴라고로 남겨 지아다지 수수지 남배 최신에르지 임인자 디균산데네 다지 데지 시가야 버르지고 이제 맨 시가야 버르면이나 안다지 미즈지 결혼 남배 최신에 말베스 자주스 민영은 지금 말베스 라면들다 뭐 잡으르죠 이나 디기다 가서지 진짜는 force charge 요마 진짜는 칼은 이거 말아 그냥 아주 쌤디 안 아주 쌤이 인체사 교권을 하는 저거 말했으면 진짜는 배 가서에 지게 가서 make deals 말아 진짜 차트가 가고 싶어 조조디 저바사디 그다지 컨트리 베네지 컨트롤을 찾아 컨트리 님이 되면 컨트롤사도 파지 컨트롤사들 땅 아주 집파 로동 체토로지 데 치민년 봐 컨트롤사다 가마래 결혼 매내야 컨트롤사 결혼 매내야 땅 아지 수연투구에 안로투구에 삼아지 근데 지금 뽑아다 닝도브지 고로 이내 아주도 돼요 아주 보통 연주사네 양 컨트롤이야 캡줘야래 마도 답시면 돼 디가르체스나 아주 기셈 나로래야 다다 컨트롤 잡자면 신테 지 가서 계획이 뉴버 톱 첨버지 매매 인사 땅 아주 셈디지 MT를 차는 동보를 차는 세상 한 참자고 컨트롤 잡지 소소지 운도 도연자 컨트롤 잡아져 가지고 차대요 등이 비싸다 아주 초진이 계획 뉴버 톱 첨버지 계획체 초진의 에너지 그러나 컨트롤이 님이 잡아치지 근데 토네 거르서바사디 거르카쇼다지 님이 템베 토네 거르서바사디 가쇼바 쇠투야를 좀아도베 우주 계셔지지 상다지 이사만 삼정
A lot of people have the feeling that the practice of patience means pretending to be a nicer person than you are or than you feel. And sometimes non-Buddhists will expect us as Buddhists to be extraordinarily nice people all the time. And if we're not as nice as they expect, or not exactly what they expect, then they'll say, well, aren't you Buddhist? Aren't you a Mahayana practitioner? Aren't you supposed to be really, really nice? The practice of patience is not simply forcing yourself to seem nice all the time. It is not forcing yourself to put up with what you can't put up with. It's not saying to yourself, I'm a Mahayana practitioner, therefore I'd better just deal with it. I'd better put up with it, whatever it is. The practice of patience starts with recognizing the problem of anger, recognizing how many problems that anger causes, and recognizing that anger in itself is dispensable, that it's not a big deal and it's not something we need. It's being able to look at your anger and say, I don't need you. I will be fine. I can function perfectly well without you, anger. And so there really are two aspects to it, because one of the things that makes it hard for us to be patient is not having enough accustomation or enough of a momentum of virtuous states of mind. The other thing that we need at the same time is a strong understanding, recognition of the problems that are caused by anger. So if you have both of these things present, on the one hand, the momentum of virtuous states of mind, and on the other hand, the recognition of how many problems anger causes, then these are the sources of patience.
Covered somewhere with the jeep and I can't just love the bed of the some capture your similar did some time ago. That you go to let it go, did some time ago. Chesa, Tijun Zel Dene, some Saba, Condro. Saba Goma Chet, Control Lane, I would do. Control La and Diligene, Susu Guer, Control Lambe Color, Lang was some you want to Madama Chen, and Dicolia, Susu Control Land to Cade Yomodo, Teriabe, Taje Che, and Dicolia, Cranji Casual, Susu Munetene, Taco Guenda, they get the sound logic. Shepherd, more shepherd. Did Chona, I will on them. Matobe, G. Condosade, G. Kabji Shabaduchi. The Nigilian some time in those. That Kabji Yashabazana Narola, and I go Gangeji Teddy. That's massive something. It's that the Indians are digging to go.
Sometimes people think of the exercise of patience as putting a lid on it or covering things up. But to use the vernacular, I would say it's not so much putting a lid on it as letting it go. For example, when we get angry, if we recognize that we're becoming angry, that's a good thing. And then if you look at how the anger makes you feel, if you look carefully at what does it do to you, and come to understand that anger does you no good, and that you can let go of it, letting go of that anger, that is the practice of patience. Attempting to cover it up or conceal it is not patience.
Rinchen Narolia. Zungang Gela draws. Junju Gela drawings, Swada, and Dana Junju Nana, Zungang Gela draws, the Sunarva, Junju Zadi, the Karazan Gala draw, Digilia, Junju series.
The fourth perfection is diligence. And again, in Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, he has a very concise definition for what we mean by diligence. It is enthusiasm for good, enthusiasm for that which is virtuous. So therefore, we need to stipulate what we mean by diligence here. It doesn't mean to be diligent in anything, such as diligent in wrongdoing. It means to be diligent, enthusiastically diligent in what is good.
Lelo shayo nusane Tako lelo number sumru chi sha marbe. Ring ju san da chawa ngin sing lelo cha de yore. Jeza koro chen de le dong to ba. Ji chawa de ne ga ro ji de me ba. 진짜 게 chawa de le dong to ba de chung ni na. Da de zun ju ge cho de ge ba le so.
Now, the early Kadamba masters defined the best diligence as giving up pointless activities. And giving up pointless activities or mundane activities is actually giving up one of the three types of laziness. One type of laziness, what we could call active laziness, is the laziness which is attachment to negative actions. And so the giving up mundane or pointless actions is how to overcome the laziness which is attachment to negative actions.
다 된데 주주지 엄마 채발래야 미다보고 먹은 지매베네 혼토야 엄마 채서 미다보고 먹지 미다보 유리게 버체 다 미다보 유리게 버체네 간다 채디 바라지 가수에 기지기지 요원도돼요 다 가르쳐 남치 참에 지경에면서 말을 남치 참에 봐요 지경랑 해 봐면 봐요 근데 그 시를 깨지 다 드릴게 윤주산에 안지 수수기 직 차와 망보지 수수 미제 tunju 디나로 루트야지 며 미제를 부르지엔 드니 윤주산다 직 오늘 전에 수수 두고에 차와 가르이 바텔이야 봐 멘봉께네 주야지 어디 알아 이 민주산 주주야고 지용만 요사데 바지 가서 미다보 거버텔이야 라레데 유스
Diligence really depends upon the meditation on impermanence. If you take impermanence to heart, then you will both observe momentary, constant changes in everything and be very much aware of your own impending death. The result of this recognition of impermanence is you will prioritize. Aware that your lifespan is uncertain and that you certainly can't do everything in one life, you will choose those actions or activities that are of the greatest importance. And so it seems that the diligence and the prioritization that is the basis of diligence can only be gained achieved through meditation on impermanence.
안 드린 건다 샤라서 맞다. 안 보시라 샤나. 근데 도공 샤오로 봐.
라오.
드린 건다 샤 거로 봐.
라서.
선이 쇼베 샤 거로 봐. 이제 가시 디스 샤나 마다. 근데 시규라서 말해.
라서. So I'd better not go on too much or I'll run out of stuff to say or to cover this afternoon and tomorrow morning.
다 돼야 조조 오래 링주산에 되는 그냥 가시 가자는데 니만이 아니야 대 고범민 주베기 다 왕 루치아브레 그때 주산에 그냥 가셔야지 예 알아요 제장 디가도레 직가르 디갑스 쉬아 총소 나가나 간다디 제가도 디갑리냐 아니 바지 디린 시에다들 잡아지 차려요 알아 가르사나 서바고 아디고라 잡아지 온디 알아
A few days ago, I presented the Akshobhya empowerment, and no doubt some of you were present. And some of the things that came up or were discussed during that process are relevant to our topic now, because in a sense, Akshobhya is very much related to the perfection of patience.
한다 즉 가져다 컨트롤 미제바 스마르 즉 민주바라고 하긴 전에 가라서나 즉 컨트롤 셈 민주바 다들 균선되는 민주바라고 하긴 전에 차례하라 제가 지당 상계 소소소리야지 뭐람 첨부만 보다가도 제가 다자가 된 바들어지니 뭐람 첨부 감겠다고 들이 순거래 아니 고문 민주바지 차샤비는 뭐람 첨부만 보다고요 디나는 做시슈르디 아니 심지에 디네 자주마도 이바도 심지 술이야 컨트롤에 삼백개가 많이 기금인수하데 딱고랑 뭐람 디즈난데 개시슈르 뭐람 대차돼요 어다들이 민주산에 나란 수역이 디 최다직 제고 타네 최다직 제고 왜는 니마직이냐 아주 최다직 제고도 윤자직이냐 용미용지 따고도 마더베 되니 최다자는 맞이나 안당아주 가서에 참섬 파트도 깔아가버리지 어디 이내야 뭐지 라렌 따위미나 안 대점 깔아가보면 되는 거지 이제 영리하다
The reason why the Buddha Akshobhya Mitrukpa is called Mitrukpa or unshakable is because when he first generated bodhicitta, among his particular aspirations, the principal one was the vow. From today onward until I achieve Buddhahood, I will never get angry at any being under any circumstances for any reason. In that way, each and every Buddha makes particular uncommon aspirations. For example, our teacher Buddha Shakyamuni made 500 unique aspirations. Similarly, Akshobhya made many, of which the principal one is the vow never to get angry. We need to try to emulate him. We need to try to see whether we can not get angry for one day or for 1 week or for how long. If we don't try, we won't get anywhere. And the thing about trying is that something that sounds or looks very difficult before you try it may not be as difficult as you expect when you do try it.
제가 삼사주 소소래야 누바예바 ability 예바디 어쩌다 제나마도 ability 예바디 하고 말어 통고 말어 드링 유산디 규제되네 아주 최다 제와리 개점을 차리어래 안에 따대야 지 최다 제외 걸이야 지기 다 들으시죠 마음심이다
Sometimes we don't really know what we're capable of. We don't really know the extent of our own ability until we try.
Then after this, tomorrow afternoon we have one empowerment. Empowerment. Actually, that empowerment, somebody told me, you going to give, somebody asked me, actually I don't know, Bodhisattva empowerment. I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm become a little bit old. And my child name is Abu Gaga. That's why I'm a little bit gaga. I'm a little bit gaga. That's why I'm forgot. Somebody told me, do you going to give this Bodhisattva empowerment? I said, I don't know. Then I asked the organization, it's true that I'm going to give this Bodhisattva empowerment. That is true. They said, yes. then I'm realizing that I'm really old. The Bodhisattva empowerment, maybe there are lots of people, they want to practice, then they want to get the Bodhisattva empowerment in order to do the practice. Yeah, there are two types of lineage or tradition. One from Yoga Tantric. Yoga Tantra. Yoga Tantra. One is from Anuyoga Tantra. That empowerment I'm going to give, I don't know that it really belongs to Yoga Tantra or Anuyoga Tantra, I'm not so sure. But looks like in between. That is more safer, I would say. I'm very smart. That's why I'm saying this in between. And that is the tradition is from Marpa Lhotsa.
Three special deities.
Three special deities of Marpa. That is included in the Kagyuganza. Yeah? That's why I think it's. But usually, lots of in the Kagyu tradition, sometimes lots of the Rinpoches give the empowerment of meaning dorsim, the dorsim that from meaning tradition. But I think since people practicing the Kagyu mantra, maybe better to get that dorsim from Marpa tradition. It's more appropriate. That's why I'm trying to give that empowerment tomorrow. Hopefully I'm the one forget.